Hi guys, so we're here with a new video, and this video is finally the ultimate Arms Warrior PvP guide video for 10.2 Season 3 of Dragonflight. And we're going to discuss multiple things. Which gear should you strive for, so what stats? Embellishments, we're going to talk briefly about it, but I think it's mostly preference, to be honest. We're going to talk about enchants, gems, we're going to talk everything about gear. Then we're going to talk about the tier set. Are they important? Which pieces you should go for? Also, we're going to talk about 3 builds. We have the meta build, we have the fan favorite build of mine, and the third build, which is the fun build you can like put in SOLOQ RBG or whatever environment you want to play. But I would play that not in the most rated fashion. But that is for the builds. We're going to talk about the PvP talents and the 2 new talents we have currently and the scenarios you're going to use those talents in. We're going to talk about comps really briefly because every season it kind of resembles a bit. We're going to talk about solo shuffle, we're going to talk about SOLOQ RBG a bit, and then we're going to talk about rotation. And we're going to try to go over them very quickly. And anyways, we're going to start right now with the stats. So the stats I've chosen with my honor gear, because now we can buy honor gear, are mostly mastery with a bit of haste. You see that really the amount of mastery and haste is like 50-50, because most pieces can, for example, be only haste and crit, and some pieces you can only play mastery or haste. So you have to be a bit like going for a 50-50 route. The reason is I do want to have 21% haste minimum. I even like jammed a bit of crit on my gear because I'm still playing around. I do feel like there is an environment where you can play crit again, but I have to test it out. But I will be making a video about it. But this is the main guide, right? This is the guide this is the build that I'm going to go in rated with. So again, I expect most people playing around that build and around the stats. But again, Arms Warrior is one of those specs that has multiple stats that are actually viable. So that's actually a very good thing if you are like me, alcoholic, and you have the envy of playing multiple builds. So we have mastery because we want to hit big moral strikes. Again, this build is going to give you the best moral strike possible. We have a lot of versatility. We are very close to the 40%. With the tier set, it will be a bit lower, but I think it's acceptable because, again, it DRs from 30%. You don't want to have 40%. But again, with honor gear, it's pretty easy to get to that 40% threshold. We also have no crafting gear yet. We're trying to build for that. We need to have the one piece of spark so we can have the spark, and then we can craft our gear very easily. But we're going to do that as well. We have double trinket because we are a human, but if I was a orc or whatever, I would put the unused trinket, of course, to liberate you from CC, and I would be playing either the unused, if you want to play the unused one, or if you want to play something where it's going to pop like 2 times per minute pretty much, you could play the insignia of alacrity. Personally, right now they both give haste. So obviously I put those 2 together, but if you're playing with conquest gear, the one is going to be crit and the other one will be haste. I would be wearing the crit one because I do like to use my badge for like my burst, for example, avatar. We have the enchants, which is Sophic Devotion. It's the one and only that is really good in every single situation. We have speed on bracers, we have sustained strength on chest, homebound speed, we have critical strike with mastery 2 times and haste to get the 21%. Why crit mastery? Because I feel like I already have enough versatility anyways, and mastery, again, it DRs a bit, so it's always going to be good to also just mesh a bit of other stats, just in case whenever you get a crit, it could be very lucky, but it could be very much a game changer. You can also put the belt enchant on your belt. I don't do that because it's expensive as hell and it's only like honor gear. So again, you see honor gear is not green. Don't worry, the eye level is the best one you can have until you have conquest or the world PvP epic one. But right now you just play with that. We have enchant, which is the strength stamina one, and we have our boots, plains runners breeze, which is the better one to be as fast as possible. We have also the double mastery enchants on the rings. Again, what you want is actually put crafting gear on different spots because it can specialize your stats pretty well. You can also go for your helm, depending if your tier set, which one you want to go. But you can also have an NG helm with full mastery, which is going to give you a big boost in damage, or a full haste one if you want to put other pieces with mastery, for example. Again, you can be very creative. Embellishments. Pretty much, I will probably make the boots one again. Like, I will upgrade my boots, the Infurious War Boots of Impunity. I do like the metal effect, which was metal. Basically, whenever you're applying a loss of control effects, generally, if you're charging, it does proc. Interrupting enemy or dispelling any target, it will increase your primary stat by 510. I think it does increase with eye level. Don't quote me on that, but it's still something extra. If you're bursting, again, it's going to be extra damage on top of damage. So it's all good. Also, the stats are quite nice. Versatility, mastery, so you cannot go wrong with that. And the second one, it's really a choice. You can play the Sun Focus one, which is basically giving you mastery above a certain threshold, which is 90%. Or you can play the Spore Cloak, because there is nothing else there. But you can maybe choose a PvE embellishment. But that really is like end game stuff. Like you want to have crafted gear first and foremost, but also you want to have conquest and tier sets. So I would not really worry too much about embellishments, because again, they are nerfed in PvP. Like the Spore Cloak one has been gutted in PvP by 70%, I think. So I would not count too much on that to survive the damage, for example. So those are the talks. Again, I do like the mastery weapon. I'm old school. I like to have the higher end damage. I know it doesn't really matter too much if you're doing a more strike, but in classic and other like versions of the game, the damage profiles were actually important. I still feel like it is important, although I think it's more of a placebo thing. Again, try to find the stat you want. There's also a haste one if you want. I personally choose mastery because I'm playing a mastery build, but I will be testing a full haste one very soon, so I can actually talk about it on video. So let's talk about the tier set. So if you want to see any tier set in the game, you can just go on item sets and you can put arms, fury, protection, or any class. For arms, which pieces do you want to wear and why? I'm going to be honest, there is only one piece you do not want to wear, and it is the shoulder one. It gives you a lot of crit, a bit of haste, but that's it. And the helm one gives you a lot of mastery with a bit of crit. We have the chest one, which is giving you a lot of haste and mastery, which is always going to be nice. We have versatility haste on hands, which is never going to be wrong. And we have haste versatility on legs. So you will have your threshold of 21% haste pretty easily, and then you can just complement it with mastery. So just do not get shoulders, and you want 4 set for arms this season. Why? Because the 2 set gives you more damage on rend. It is 30%. I think in PvP it is 15%. It is going to be noticeable, and also it can proc sudden death triggered by Rend's bleed damage. So you will be able to AoE Rend on everyone. I think it's a proc per minute anyways, but it doesn't matter. You will get a lot of sudden deaths and your execute damage will be through the roof. But not only that, the 4 set will also give you your execute being like improved, which will powerfully slam the ground, causing a thunderclap that deals 50% increased damage. It's not going to be 100%, which is still going to be nice because it does some good damage. And in addition, the execute target bleeds for 25 of execute's damage over 5 seconds. If this bleed is reapplied, it also remaining the damage is added to the new bleed, so you can really stack it, and it does a lot of damage at the end of the day. Really, everything you're going to do with execute is going to be added upon the damage you have on execute. So it's a huge game changer on 4 set. You want to go for 4 set, and the good thing is for Fury, if you're playing both specs, it is also very welcome to do that, because you have Audience Fury dealing more damage and causing your next 3 Bloodthirst or Bloodbaths to deal more damage, and also having more crit chance. But also your 4 set will be reducing the Audience Fury ability with your crits from Bloodthirst. So again, the 4 set is not as important as the Arms Warrior one. The 2 set is more important for Fury, but I will be talking about it on my Fury guide. But right now on my Arms guide, 4 set is needed, so you want to go for that. and there are multiple ways to get it. I already discussed it in my previous video, so you want to check that out, just to check that out. Let's talk about builds now, the most important thing. We have 3 builds: the meta one, the fun one, which is also capable to be meta. Personally, I play the second one the most because I think it's more fun and more engaging. The first one is more meta because everyone is probably going to play like this because it is less button bloat for a bit less damage, but more like survivability, I would say. And the third one is more about pure AoE damage and funness. Solo queue RBGs is going to be very fun with this build, but for like rated solo shuffle or whatever, the first one and the second one are the best. So the first one is the build. That's how I call it. This is the build that most people are playing. There are a few things that you can change depending on situations. Again, if you are not facing with someone that has either an absorb or an immunity, for example, like the Divine Shield or Ice Block, you can remove this and go for Pain and Gain, so you can still go for the Reinforced Plates, or you can also drop the point into Haunt Reflex if you're playing versus casters. You don't really need increased armor versus casters, although it does increase your strength. It is not like substantially enough to validate that point versus casters. But again, that is like intermediate stuff. This you can choose however you want. The more important thing that you want is Blood and Thunder from Thunderclap, because again, it's also going to apply from your foreset. It's going to be very critical, but also it's going to apply Rend, and Rend is something you don't really press because it doesn't do like that much damage extra. Thunderclap does more damage and it spreads to multiple people and it does the same effect, which is applying Rend. So it's going to be very nice to have that. Unfortunately, barbaric training is useless, but you do want that for endurance training, which is going to give you more stamina, but also shockwave. Shockwave is something I'm not playing every single game, depending if you have already stuns in your team. For example, you're playing with a DH, don't play with shockwave. I think it's useless because they already have multiple stuns. Just put that point into uproar and you're fine, and you will have that 5% increased stamina and also have a reduced CD on your Thunderous Roar, which effectively also does a lot of damage as a whole. But you can play shockwave normally, like depending on comps you're playing most of the games. But again, you want to be flexible. You don't want to be like stuck with one build. It's warrior. Warriors are very versatile, so do use that versatility that is included in the build. And I'm not talking about the stats, pun intended. Here you cannot see because of my camera, but we're playing with Blade Master's Torment because we're playing a Blade Storm build. Blaze Storm hurts like a truck. If they stay inside of your Blaze Storm, they're getting destroyed. It does a lot of damage. Also, we are playing on the SPEC tree, something very special, which is effectively going to give you more damage. And that's how I get the best mortal strike possible, or the best amount of damage possible in that certain time. I have like one of the bigger bursts in the game because of this build, and a lot of people do play other builds, but they don't get the same amount of burst. They have maybe more consistency, but I like the burst. I like to see numbers, and I hope you guys also like to see them. Overall, we're playing with Thunderous Roar instead of Spear of Bastion because Spear of Bastion is very inconsistent. Unfortunately, it's a physical effect, and people can just sometimes run out of it because of their abilities that they have, so I'm not really inclined of that. Bitter Immunity is interesting. I personally don't play it because you have dampening in arenas, and as a whole, if it could actually remove bleeds, I would be more inclined to play that, but I feel like bleeds are like currently way higher than just poison damage or diseases. So those are the main things. You could always play a bit more of a fun build. Again, you don't have to play with those two abilities. You can just remove them and go for second win with an extra damage, reduced CD on Thunderous Roar. But then again, it really depends on how you want to play and where you're going to play. In World PvP, again, you don't really need Shockwave. Often than not, someone is going to die with the first stun. So play with that. I'm a bit sick, so excuse me. On the SPEC tree, that's the important thing. We have some great things going on. We're playing with basically Ignore Pain. That's just a no-brainer. Just play that. It's going to make you more tanky. We're playing with Strength of Arms because I do like the increased damage on the crits for overpower. But you could, to be honest, depending on situations, depending on lobbies, if they are really clumped together, just go for improved sweeping strikes. It is going to give you the most damage possible with like sweeping strikes. It is going to improve your damage, it's going to improve your pressure overall in AoE situations, and duplicating the damage to everyone is going to be something you always want in AoE situations. So you could play with improved sweeping strikes if you're like in AoE situations where they're clumped up together and they're not really spread out. If they're spread out, let's say they're both casters, just play strength of arms and you would have more value with that. We have also a massacre. You should play that because execute is going to be a big portion of your damage right now because of the 4-set. We have in for the kill with blunt instruments. Again, here the choice is the same. If they're like clumped up together, just play Warbreaker. If they're not, play with the most damage possible on Cluster Smash with the increased duration also on the effect. We have not Skull Splitter on this build, unfortunately, because you don't have enough points, but you have Rend and you have the improved Rend damage and Turn Restore damage and also deep wounds. Overall, it's going to give you the most consistent damage possible, but we also have some proportions with increased burst with Fatality, which is going to give you more damage as well. Again, it can be removed because of immunities, unfortunately. But it is what it is. But if you can stack it and they cannot remove it, at one point you're going to do a big execute and you're going to decimate them. It's something I play. You can just remove that if you want to and play with Skull Splitter, which will only increase your damage on deep wounds. But it is what it is. You also can put like increased healing on your deep wounds, or you can play Blood Surge. You have more choices. We're playing with, of course, Bloodletting and Battle Lord. We're also playing Hurricane, and Hurricane is one of the best talents out there. I think people are overlooking it. It's giving you more speed, it's giving you more strength, although it is nerfed by 50% in PvP, it's still going to give you around 15% strength, which is going to be noticeable. That's how I get my better motor strikes out there. That's how I get the best amount of damage and amount of burst, and you can play around it with your Blade Master's Torments, which again, if you're doing an avatar, it's going to Blade Storm, which is effectively going to give you the buff, and the buff is going to be 6 seconds long after it, so you have a lot more burst possibilities with that, and you can improve it even more by doing a Blade Storm afterwards, so you have Avatar and the Hurricane for a long time. The only thing you don't have is the ability to stop Blade Storm to be able to pummel. So again, a lot of people actually ask me, well, how come I cannot stop my Blade Storm? It is because of Hurricane. It's actually making your Blade Storm unstoppable pretty much. It's also stated Blade Storm cannot be cancelled while using Hurricane. So it's written. You can also play Unhinged if you want to. I have a build where I play with Unhinged. It is not bad. It is nerfed in PvP though. It's only 60% more strikes damage. So it does increase your Blade Storm damage overall because of course you have your Blade Storm damage and also the extra more strikes which can cleave with sweeping strikes. It is good. But I do prefer, personally, I like Hurricane, I like playing with Hurricane. I wish it was not nerfed as much as it is, but it is nerfed for good reasons, because again, it will give you insane strength because of that. But Unhinged is the most safest point if you want to, just play with that. I personally don't play with Warlord's Torment anymore because I feel like the recklessness that you get is for a small amount and you can get stunned into it. So basically you have no real advantage with that. Also, it's only Avatar and Colossus, and Blade Storm is just there for being there. So I personally don't like that, but whatever. You could play it if you want to. I like my double Blade Storm. Some people don't like it. I like to have the freedom and the possibility to catch up on targets with Blade Storm. We have Sharpened Blades, increasing my damage for more strike and execute in general. Also more crits as chance on execute, which is always welcome. We have Execution Precision, also nerfed in PvP, but still gives me the increased damage on more strike, which is very important for my one-shots and for my feeling of the game. I really like to have my more strikes up there damage-wise, and this gives me the opportunity to have that kind of damage. So I really like that. I want to talk briefly maybe about PvP talents really quickly. We have Storm of Destruction, which has changed. Now it snares the targets for 70%. So again, people are not going to run easily from your Blade Storm. Of course, they have freedom sometimes, but if they don't have freedom, they're going to stick with you. And again, it's very important to have the enemies close to you, because that's at the point where you can actually put pressure onto the enemy. I really like that. We have sharpened blade, which is pretty much baseline. I wish it was baseline for arms, but it is not. But it is baseline on your PvP talents. Maybe in 1v1 situations you don't play with sharpened blade and you can play something else. But in arenas or in BGs, generally speaking, you will always play sharpened blade. The newest talent that we have is Battlefield Commander with Safeguard. Battlefield Commander is a high value talent because it affects nearly all your shouts, except for example Berserker Shout, which we are not talented in, but we have Piercing Howl, which effectively roots the enemy. Always welcome. And when someone leaps, for example, if Feral Druid is leaping, you can stop the leap by doing the Piercing Howl. So it's very important to use it correctly. More stamina on Battle Shout. We have Intimidating Shout, reduce CD, which is always welcome because again, it's not TR'd. So you want to actually use it as ASAP. It's DR 30 seconds, but your CD is 1.3 minutes. So of course, the sooner you have, the easier you can actually do another CC, excuse me. And we also have Rallying Cry, which effectively is going to remove movement impairing effects and also grant 30% movement speed to allies and to yourself. Very important because sometimes a mage can frost nova you and you cannot really stop the polymorph. If you're using Rallying Cry effectively, you can actually stop a lot of stuff because of that. So I really play with that. It's really a fun talent. And Thunderous Roar, increasing more damage onto the enemy, which is again very, very welcome. I really like this talent. This talent is pretty much the talent I'm playing all the time whenever I'm playing with Thunderous Roar. If you have difficulties and you are not the target, for example, you're playing with an enhancement shaman, play Safeguard and he will love you. It is giving you 20%, it is giving your ally 20% wall for 5 seconds. You have 2 charges. It is going to make a intervene for 40 seconds CD, but it's always going to be very interesting to have, especially if your healer CC'd. You can actually help your ally because of that. Again, I don't think it's busted. I do feel it's very strong, but it does take a PvP talent. So again, choose wisely. If you are the target, you don't really have a lot of value by taking Safeguard. And personally, I do feel like I'm the target most of the time as an arms warrior. But that's especially in Soul Shuffle. But that's my opinion. The other stuff I already discussed multiple times. Warbanner is very good versus RMP. Duel is very good versus RMP as well. If you're not the target, you can duel the rogue or you can duel the mage, and it will effectively just nullify his damage. Very strong for against your ally, of course. If it's against you, it's too bad. You don't get a lot of value for it. Master and Commander, I don't really like it because, although I don't like it because I do have to sacrifice one of the talents which are for me mandatory, which is the Storm of Destruction and Sharpened Blade. Disarm, very strong versus Frost Decay. You should always play that versus them. Subtlety Rogue also, but generally speaking, you're the target, so you don't really have a chance to disarm their burst because you're already kidneyed. Demolition, very strong versus Mistweaver Monks in 2s, and Warlocks also in 2s. You should just play that and play with Shattering Throw and just shatter their Dark Pact pretty much, or their Cocoon from Mistweavers. Warbringer, I don't play that anymore. They nerfed it to the ground, so it's no point to play that. Rebound, I never played it to be honest because it's making your spell reflect a longer CD, and the extra damage is welcome, but it's not going to be doing too much because if they are aware, they're going to throw a Fire Blast, for example, instead of a Ice Lance or a Glacial Spike. So that's for the PvP talents. Now talk for the second build. The second build is the most fun one for me. I enjoy it the most. It's playing with Skull Splitter and Tide of Blood. We lose Fatality and we lose Strength of Arms, but you're not really playing a crit build anyways. Although it does gives you more crit, we're playing with Skull Splitter. It gives you a 21-second CD ability, which is going to speed up Deep Wounds and Rend. Why Rend? Because we have also Tide of Blood. It's also increasing the damage of Skull Splitter, which is effectively going to do around 45, 50k normal hit. If it crits, it's around 90k, 80k, depending on modifiers. It's strong. it does make your rend and deep wounds hurt for way more on details. You could win 3 or 4% on rend and deep wounds, effectively going to give you 8% more damage overall. It does more consistent damage, and we keep our burst because of Hurricane. Again, we have a Hurricane. You can also play Unhinged, but personally I do play a Hurricane. I do like this build. I really enjoy this. I'm going to show you also my rotation on the dummy, which effectively it's the same rotation but without Skull Splitter on the first build. So I'm going to show you with this build. And our third build, this is exactly the same as the first one, by the way, just we have Skull Splitter and Tide of Blood, which effectively is going to grant you another ability to press with more consistent damage from your rend. And with the Foresight, it's going to be actually doing way more, because it's also going to speed up rend, which effectively is going to speed up the amount of sudden deaths you will get from rend. Again, it's a win-win. I really like that. And then we have the build which is no dots, and we're playing literally with no dots except for deep wounds. We're playing with Spear of Bastion, we're playing with Pain and Gain, we're playing with Second Wind, because again you don't really need too many talents. You don't need Thunderclap, you don't need Blood and Thunder. You can play with Shockwave, but you don't have to if you want to have more damage on Piercing Verdict. Perform Spear of Bastion, just do that if you want to. It will crit for 100k, which is or even more actually. It's going to be quite nice. Also more rage regeneration, although this is not the problem for arms these days. But we're playing with Shockwave. I really like this build. It's more of a solo queue kind of thing, because again Spear of Bastion is inconsistent. It's also a long CD. That's the only problem I see. And we're playing with Unhinged. You can play with a Hurricane, but I feel like Unhinged with Spear of Bastion just gives you the extra damage that is needed to sometimes decimate a mage. Again, a mage that is not going to get away is going to get destroyed by it. They need to ice block or alter time, and if you don't have a dispel, it's too bad. We also have a lot of healing effects fueled by violence, and we also have Blood Surge. But Deep Wounds is pretty much there to just improve your damage and heal you a bit. That's it. It's not going to do any damage, it's not going to be noticeable, but it's going to do insane AoE pressure with Sweeping Strikes being improved. With you can also play Warbreaker if you want to. Personally, I do play with Blunt Instruments because I do want more damage on Colossus Smash. We have Unhinged, we have all the goodies for Execute and more strikes. So overall, I like this build. I do feel like it's inconsistent. I may try it more and more. But with this build, I would not play with Battlefield Commander, because I feel like I will lose a bit of utility from Thunderous Roar. I would be playing maybe Warbanner, Disarm, Warbringer, Master and Commander. But Battlefield Commander is also quite nice because of Rallying Cry, so I don't know. For that, it is quite open. But those are the builds. I'm going to show you my rotation with the second build, but first and foremost, let's talk about rotation, like comps really quickly. Choose, you want to play with a healer. You can play with a DPS, but it would be with an Enhancement Shaman or with a Shadow Priest, but they need to off-heal a lot. It's not really fun for anyone. You can play with Retribution Paladin, but it is really bursty, and that stops there. You lose in 1 minute or you win in 1 minute. But play with a healer, and personally, I prefer to play with either a Holy Priest or with a Disc Priest. Now, if the damage that they have is quite nice, but you are very squishy, do be careful. I like to play with a Resto Shaman. I think Resto Shaman Arms Warrior is one of the better comps out there. But again, Resto Shaman depends about their throughput right now. And I like to play with a Mistweaver as well. It gives you more damage on the target and also very safe. And you can play like Punch Monk, pretty much Fist Weaving Monk, and it's really going to do a lot of pressure. Holy Paladin is quite nice as well, but that's it. Talking about trees, pretty much any comp is good for you. That's good for your Arms Warriors, is that you have many more options than other specs. My preferred comps would be Thunder, would be Turbo, which is with Elemental Shaman and Enhancement Shaman respectively. KFC is also quite nice, especially since Hunters are actually looking good. Playing with a Demonology Warlock is also an option, but it depends about the Demonology Warlock if it's going to be strong or not. You can play with Fire Mage, it's going to be very bursty. With an Arcane Mage, it's going to be very annoying for the enemy team. You have many comps, but I would say some comps are a bit less interesting, like for example with a DH or with a Monk. It feels like you're playing double Arms Warrior pretty much. I do like to play with something that has some utility or CC attached to it, but Arms can play with any comp, so knock yourself out. Solo shuffle wise, you're going to be very strong. I'm just afraid about caster lobbies, but that's for every melee pretty much. I do feel like Arms Warrior is one of the better melees out there. I don't think it's the best melee, but it is one of the better melees. So you will have some fun that some specs would not have in some lobbies. You have more good lobbies than bad lobbies, and you're going to enjoy most of the time because you have a high deciding spec. So you're going to be deciding if it's either a win or a lose for your team. So it's going to be quite nice as well. SOLOQ RBGs, I kind of changed my mind. I think Arms Warrior is quite good. I'm not going to say that's top of the league, but it's going to be quite good. It does insane damage. It has some survivability. Again, ignore pain and impending victory, healing for a lot because there is no dampening. Your burst is unrivaled. Your 1v1 situations are not that bad versus a few specs, and then very bad versus another few specs. But you have impact, but it doesn't feel like you're having the most impact. But it does feel like it's strong, so just knock yourself out. Multiple builds are actually very fun to play, and it really depends on you if you want to actually perform or not. Let's talk about really quickly the rotation. So rotation wise, it's one of the better specs to play because you have way more abilities to press. This build is with the Skull Splitter build. So what you want to do is pretty much, we don't have foresight yet, so I'm not going to talk about the extra sudden deaths right now. So what you want to do is do your bleeds whenever you can. So you have your deep wounds and you have your thunderclap. So you have both bleeds up. And what you want to do is pretty much a Skull Splitter into a Colossal Smash into a Avatar with your Hurricane, and then you're going to do Thunderous Roar behind it, and then you have some insane damage with Sharpened Blade, boom, 264k damage. And we have modified our add-on to not show all the small hits, by the way. So Rend is not showing, for example, but it is doing insane amount of damage. I'm going to show you. So after your burst, you can do another burst with your Skull Splitter into Blade Storm, for example, another Execute, another Overpower, and another Maul Strike, and it does insane damage. And you can see Maul Strike didn't crit, unfortunately, but did 264k normal damage. If it critted, it would be around 400k, which is, again, if you can do a 400k in arenas, it is going to be insane. Now, the modifiers are a bit bugged on dummies, so I would suspect it would be around 300k if it critted, and around 200k if it's a normal hit. But it's still a lot of damage for Arms Warrior. It is one of the better specs of that, consistent damage wise, but also burst wise, so you should play with that. We have Overpower doing for 80k. I don't crit, unfortunately. I feel like I want to build crit on my character, but again, is it worth to lose the consistency and go for more RNG? I will have to test that. We have Execute doing insane amount of damage. We hit five times and we did like 140k normal hits. Blade Storm doing less damage than on PvP. In PvP it does way more damage because we have modifiers, PvP modifiers, so it does around 50k normal hits. On mages, for example, Rend actually doing good damage. You see, it crits for 36k. It's a bit less in PvP because of not armor, but because of versatility and such. It will be around 25k pretty much, but it's still going to be noticeable. It's going to be good enough to play. We have Deep Wounds actually doing some acceptable damage. We have Thunderous Roar, again, just one button press, it gives you around 400k damage with the unpress and the bleed. And don't forget, it is AoE, so again, it's very hard to defend versus that. Also, it's bleed, so it means that it is not going to be reduced by armor. We have melee attacks. It's pretty much melee, nothing to talk about. We have also Skull Splitter, like I said, 52k normal hit, 65k crit because I critted once my burst was over, but if it critted, it would be around 90k, and it speed ups the damage from Rend and Deep Wounds. And again, you can also cleave that with Sweeping Strike, so you can speed up on multiple targets. Going to be very cool to play around. Closer Smash doing some okay damage, and Thunderclap 18k. It's not that good, but with Foresight it will do more damage with Execute. Anyways, so the damage profiles are very nice, very cool, very fun. I want to show you my rotation on the Spear of Bastion one, although I feel like it's more of a, not a meme, but it's not the best, right? So what you want to do is, again, overpower. You want to apply a Deep Wounds, Execute, and if you're ready to burst, put your Sharpened Blade, Colossus Smash into a Spear of Bashing into Avatar, you can like do together, because it is without GCD, and it does a lot of damage as a whole, right? And really, it does a lot of damage. Like, people cannot survive that if they're like without defensives, right? And you can do a shockwave, and yeah, the damage is again very impressive. More strike, again doing some good damage with Blaze-Storm, and that's it. So you see, we don't have Rend, so we're missing the damage. The Harpoons does a lot less damage as well. Spear of Bastion does some good damage, but it's not going to be as much as, let's say, a Thunderous Roar. Like you see, 228k, it's not a 400k. More strike doing a lot less damage. You see, without Hurricane, it does a lot less damage as a whole. We have Execute doing some okay damage. Blaze-Storm doing more damage because of Unhinged being tied together. We have Overpower, again, doing some good respectable damage. But you see, you have less consistent damage. It's way more about the Unhinged Blaze-Storm that you can have, and the ability for you to suppress the enemy with consistent damage with your Unhinged. I personally don't like it as much as before. I think it's way too nerfed. I feel like a lot of stuff should be buffed around the Spear of Passion stuff. But I can understand why they're not doing it. But they're written themselves into a corner, and they have to actually remove Spear of Bastion to add something else to actually go forward, I would say. But right now, more strike doing some good damage, but I prefer the other build. Like I said, the second build is my preferred one. I feel like a lot of people are going to prefer this build as well. You're losing the improved spear, the improved sweeping strikes, but it does give you way more with Skull Splitter, in my opinion. So macros, really quickly, let's talk about macros. I don't have a lot of macros. We have like cancel aura Blaze-Storm pretty much, but like I said, if you play with Hurricane, you don't have that, so don't expect that as well. We have cancel aura for a lot of stuff. We have show tools. If target is party 1, you can also have a party 2, or you can also write names. It's the same really, and it will do automatically for you. You have party 1 and party 2 here. We have the Rallying Cry macro for Protection Warrior, Arms Warrior, Fury Warrior with Bitter Immunity. I don't play with Bitter Immunity anymore, but again, if you play it, at least you have it in your macro. We have the Burst macro pretty much doing everything at once. We have Spear of Bastion also inside because it is GCD less. So we have Avatar doing this together with Spear of Bastion. You can also do Avatar with Colossus Smash together as well. Depending if you're playing with Blaze-Storm or not, with the Tormented Warlords. With Recklessness, again, if you're like playing Fury way before, you could actually do Recklessness and Avatar and also Blaze-Storm. Demoralizing Shot, same for Protection Warriors, very cool. And then use 14, which is the unused trinket. So that is my burst rotation, my burst macros. You can make way more macros like focus macros or whatever, but I feel like as an arms warrior I can pretty much just top target and do a big pummel reactionary, I would say. But you can and should probably do a focus macro for pummel, but that's preference in my opinion. As a warrior, it's way more important on enhancement shaman, elemental shaman, like casters, because you're way more further, so you can actually do a focus spell lock pretty easily. But anyways, that is my guide. It was a very long video, but I feel like I discussed everything I wanted to discuss. Again, I will make way more videos about Arms Warrior, like gameplay wise, where I showcase, where I explain what I'm doing. But also I'm going to make guides about different builds. For example, a full crit one, a full haste one, a full mastery one without going 21% haste. I would do that as well. And I would also make a video once we have the 4 set and talk about it more briefly with more gameplay. But anyways, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. We do PvP content for multiple classes. My mains are Arms Warrior, Shaman specs in general. We have Hunter right now, and we're still undecided about 2 other specs, but I would say Retribution is really inside of that, and I do need a caster one, but it depends. It really depends on my mood if I want to play Warlock or Mage or whatever. But anyways, you can see way more videos with that. We're also going to make a Fury one. This week we're going to do an Elemental Shaman one and also an Enhancement Shaman one because I'm playing that and I'm very, very thrilled of talking about them. Again, thank you for watching and we will see each other probably very soon in the next video. Have a good day. Bye. Bye.